coming up.
By the way, last night we had a major haunting, and I don't know that I feel comfortable ever being here by myself ever again. And she's just like, oh, I bet I know what that was all about. A woman was murdered here.
Welcome to Unholy Vibes. I'm Alex, your host, and today we have a returning guest, the very special Hailey Fuller, the demonologist herself. Hailey, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you back on the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back to talk about more spooky stuff.
Yes, when we first spoke, we talked for like 3 hours, and I
Which
was
is
like, I
wild.
could do this all day. We became besties. We talked about witches. We talked about ancient demons. We talked about your own personal horror stories. And everyone, and I mean everyone that I know that's listened to your episodes, loved them. They were equally
That's
fascinated. So just know
so cool.
the
I
people
appreciate
love
it.
you.
I love that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I'm so happy to have you back because, like we spoke about when we first recorded, you have more. You've got more to tell. So today I want to dive into all of that. I've got some questions already, but take it away. Give the people what they came for, and let's hear more of your spooky tales.
Okay. I was thinking about it. Like when we talked about recording again, I was just like, my gosh, what is it that I'm missing? And I remembered, like, oh my gosh, hello, that I had two really, like, not, one is really spooky and one is just weird stories. And then also, like, I know this is that we've been talking about demons and witches and stuff, but also like an almost serial killer story from my childhood where I was like, how did I forget about that? Like, did I wanna just, like, displace it or, like, but then I was like, "No, it's too weird." It's one of those things that I rarely talk about, but when I do, I'm like, "Oh, this is such a weird and kind of creepy story that obviously I wanna talk about it," right?
Yes, and you teased me at the very end of our last recording. It's not in the episodes, but, like, I remember we wrapped up and you're like, "I gotta go. Oh, by the way, I have these serial killer stories from my childhood." And I was like,
Right, yeah,
"What?
that's right.
What do you're gonna leave me with that?" So, please, dive in,
So
start wherever you feel is best, and let's hear it.
So I was thinking about the spooky like ghost stories, and I was remembering how so when I was in college, I lived with my great grandparents, which was a unique setting in and of itself because my great grandfather was like 93. So it was a trip living with like an 89-year-old and a 93-year-old, right? Like in Vegas, so like I'm 20 something. Like it was not your normal like freshman year of college experience, but they would travel like all the time, right? So
Was
I
it
lived
fun
at their
though?
house.
Like, did you
Oh, it
like
was
it?
so fun. Oh, I loved it. My great grandfather was like all of that side of the family was in show business, so they had
Hmm.
all these wild stories and connections with like old actors and like just really crazy stuff. Like you would be sitting at the dinner table, and my great grandfather would all of a sudden pull a story out about like some Western actor, and you would be like, "Where did that come from?" Right? It was really cool. So they love to travel to go visit. He has 3 kids. Yeah, 3 kids. My grandfather, my great uncle, and my great aunt. And they would go to Idaho sometimes to visit my great uncle. So the way that the house was set up was there was the living room with the TV and the couch and everything, and then you had the dining room and the kitchen. And the dining room had, I'll never forget, they were the ugliest chairs. Like it was a table and these ugly white chairs that had wheels. And then in the back was creepy enough because it was like wicker, but not really wicker. And it looked like it had this really creepy face in it. So I hated those chairs. Like I despised them. They were so hideous.
Yeah, I don't like
But my
that.
great grandpa, no, it was awful. It was so awful because they looked like they were staring at you. And he would pull one of the chairs up to the TV every morning and night, like to listen to the news because he couldn't see and he couldn't hear. So he would pull the chair up to the TV and he would like sit there with his head against the TV, practically listening to the news because he couldn't hear anything. So they left to go visit my great uncle, and I already was creeped out because I'd never lived by myself. I'd never really been by myself. Because when you grow up with siblings, and if your parents ever go out or like they even leave you for just a couple of hours, you have someone there always. And so this was like the first time I think that I had ever really been like by myself in a house alone. And I was like 20. No, I wasn't. I was young. This was when I was a freshman. So I would have been like 17, 18. So I was super young. I remember vividly I had gone to the library. I had rented Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And I was pumped. Like I loved that movie. I put it in the DVD player. I'm watching it. And my great grandfather's chair was sitting right in front of the TV. And I dozed off a little bit and I woke back up and okay. Another thing you have to know about the living room is that there's a fireplace. Why? I don't know because it's Vegas and it's like a million degrees all the time. But the top of the fireplace had this gold, like it was ugly. It was this gold mirrored strip that was on the top. So I found myself like looking up at the strip and I heard this weird noise. And I was like, okay, already creeped out because I'm by myself and I'm like looking around because I'm like, this is weird. I hear a noise. And then I smelled this really strong perfume. And that kind of freaked me out because my great grandmother never wore perfume. She was a cocktail waitress, so she always smelled like cigarettes, just always, not perfume. So that freaked me out. And I didn't have any perfume that smelled like this. And so I'm like building this up in my mind, right? Like there's obviously like something's happening that's creeping me out. So I look over at that strip on the fireplace and you can see the reflection. You can see my reflection. You can see the couch's reflection. You can see my grandfather's chair's reflection. And my grandfather's chair is just sitting there like a normal chair in front of the television. But in the reflection, it's spinning around on one leg. And I told this to my mom, and my mom was like, "You're making this up." I'm like, "No, I swear to God, I remember it to this day. This was 20 years ago, and I remember it to this day. It scared the hell out of me. I picked up and ran. I didn't even shut off the TV. I picked up and ran and I went into my bedroom and I slammed the door and I put my dresser in front of the door and I stayed there until my great grandparents got back the next day. Like I did not leave. I didn't leave to go to the bathroom. I didn't leave to get food. I was freaked out.
Wow.
Like I was
I'm freaked
done,
out.
done.
I knew something was coming. I knew something was coming, but I didn't know what to expect. But that is so hold on. You turn around, the chair is not spinning,
No,
right?
the chair's not big because I saw the reflection and I was like, "Oh my God." And I was like, "How is that happening?" And I look and the chair is just being a chair. But in the reflection, and I look back at the reflection, it's doing the same thing. And I was just like, "Fuck no." And I'm like out of there. Like, absolutely not.
What is
No.
that?
So, well, this is where I was a little annoyed at my great grandmother because
Okay.
when they came back the very next day, I'm in my room, right? I hear them come in through the garage and I leave my room and I go out to tell them. But now how do you preface that, right? Like two 90-year-old people. By the way, last night we had a major haunting and I don't know that I feel comfortable ever being here by myself ever again. So I broached the subject with my great grandmother and she's just like, "Oh, I bet I know what that was all about." And I'm like, Pardon? You know what that's about?" And she goes, "Oh, yes, a woman was murdered here
Oh.
before you bought the house." She was
Just no big deal. I
no
forgot. I
big
don't
deal.
know if I mentioned this. Someone was
Mhm.
murdered here.
Someone was murdered. She was actually strangled in the bathtub by her husband.
No.
Mhm.
And it wasn't I mean, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. She goes, "I smell that perfume all the time. I just know it's her."
Oh my word. Yeah, thanks, grandma, great grandma,
Mhm, mhm.
for not telling
So
me this.
after that, I was not ever I if they were gonna go visit someone, I would go and stay with a friend, or I would coordinate that time to go back to visit my family because I was never alone in that house by myself at night again. And it scared me so much that that Monty Python DVD that was in the DVD player, I forgot about it and I returned all the DVDs. And it wasn't until I moved out the next year that I found the DVD in the DVD player. It was like, "Oh, that's from that night. That's right." And I still have it somewhere as a memento.
A memento of that haunting.
Mhm.
So this I mean, they were 90 at the time, and this was how long ago? I'm assuming they've passed since?
Oh, yeah, this was like 20 years ago.
Okay, yeah. I mean, some people lived. Yeah, anyway, what ended up happening to this house? Like, what is just someone else is living in it now?
Someone else must be living in it now. It's just in a random neighborhood out in Henderson in Nevada. And it was I mean, the whole cul-de-sac was basically just elderly people. It was like a very old part of Henderson, not Henderson proper, but like Henderson, Las Vegas.
Right.
And so it was just a lot of elderly people. So I often wonder, like, what's happening there? Are they seeing or smelling or getting other parts of encounters with this person? But it was just so bizarre because it was not like and what really stood out to me was that I didn't know anything about what had happened in this house until after that had happened. So it wasn't like I had built this up in my mind that someone had been murdered, right?
Right. And you're because then people are like, "Oh, you were just it's all in your head."
Mhm.
You were spoiler free.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. So to me, I was just like, what is going on? And it seemed like it was a fairly new house, a fairly new neighborhood. I mean, it was probably from the 90s maybe, but murders happen in any house. So it was shocking. It was shocking to me. And I was
And I have this sort of saying that if a house is older than 1970, just the chances of a haunting just rise exponentially.
oh,
But for
absolutely.
it to be from the 90s, it's like, hey, that's kind of a fresh haunting. Like that's
Mhm.
relatively a fresh haunting. Now, I mean, that's 30 something, whatever.
Mm,
But still,
yeah.
wow, okay. And she was just so nonchalant about this. They never talked about anything else happening.
No, just that she would say, "Oh, yeah, no, I smell her perfume in my bathroom all the time." And the thing to me was when she said, "Oh, yeah, no, she was murdered in the bathtub." And no one seemed to wonder if this was like an angry ghost. Like, where my mind went. Like, if I'm murdered in the bathtub by my husband, I'm gonna be pissed. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be like friendly and just coming around to say hi. Like, I obviously have something to say. And spinning a chair in a reflection, that said something to me.
Yeah, and here's the thing, who's that for? And also, what
Yeah,
even is that? Like,
yeah.
it's all speculation, and some people will say it's nothing, some people will say it's something. But in the realm of, like, spirits and ghosts and their ability or inability to interact with certain things, what is it like, okay, the chair wasn't actually moving, but the reflection, like, how does a ghost manipulate a reflection? I don't know. Or
I
maybe
have
do they
been
get in your head and it's all a trick of the brain? How does a ghost do all this? I don't know. I don't know all the ghost moves. I don't know their stats and their move list. Anyway, so you seem to be like a magnet for things like this, weird things.
it's true, and my mom and I, we always joked about that when I was growing up because we were always like, it's true, like, weird things, like, weird ghostly things, like, weird people, like, one time in the parking lot, we were accosted by some dude who gave us a 3-hour lecture on head cheese, like, it was just, like, weird. I don't it was a Safeway parking lot, I was, like, 6 years old, like, yeah,
3 hours in a parking
3
lot?
hours.
I would have been like,
Yeah, and
"No, thanks, dude. I'm outta here."
yeah, and he was wearing like it's because we're always like, "Oh, that's so interesting," and, we don't mean it, but it's like you don't wanna hurt someone's feelings, and then they just take that as an invite to tell you all the weird things about their lives, and he had, like, a belt with knives on it, like, it was a whole thing. But yeah, like, yes, we are magnets for weird, which and sometimes I appreciate, like, I will take a good ghost encounter or, like, a really weird story, but sometimes it's not so great.
Like someone living in your attic.
Like, someone living in your attic. When you sent me that video, I was like, "How is this how is this so common?" And that really freaked me out.
Yeah, there's a
Like,
name
now
for it.
whenever we go anywhere or, like, to hotels or, like, look at new places if we're moving, I'm always looking, like, is there an attic space? And currently, the apartment that we're in, there isn't, which is good.
Probably for the best. Just
Mhm.
well, do you yeah, okay. So I've heard other stories of, like, people living in crawl spaces or whatever in the walls, so just nightmarish. I don't like it at all.
No.
Okay, so 3 hours in a Safeway parking lot. Sorry, that just throws
Yeah.
me off. You painted a good picture here, and I just can't stop seeing this in my mind. This is the kinda shit you see in, like, a horror movie.
Mhm. Well, that's why I locked myself in my room for a day and a half.
Well, yeah, yeah, and you were what, in your 20s, you said?
Oh, no, because it was 2005, so I was 17.
Oh, okay.
I was
Regardless,
yeah,
you're not a child, like,
no.
you're older. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Damn. What is your life? Okay.
Well, and it makes me so mad because it's like, at that time, I wasn't really into all of this stuff, so it's like, what would have happened if I had experienced, like, the ghost hunting things that I've experienced now? Like, what would it be like to go back to that house and, like,
On
try to
purpose.
find
Yeah,
something, you
all of
know?
it
Yeah,
intentional.
exactly.
Man. So, you should find that house and go back to it
Right?
and just be like, "Hey, my great-grandparents used to live here. Is it's haunted, right? Like, you guys there's no way you haven't, right?
It's fun.
Right?"
Have you seen chairs spinning? Have you smelled perfume?
Ugh.
Like, come on. There's gotta be something.
See, I know I would go to a place like that and just nothing would happen because I'm not a magnet kind of things. Okay, so I know you have more stories, so let's move along to other ones because we've just got I know there's so many in the chamber.
Oh, yeah. So, my other thing that really stood out, and I actually have a video, I have to see if I can find the video of it, was at my dad's house up in Washington. So, my dad passed away in 2015, and he had, our house, like, my childhood house up in Washington, and we had my house and then my grandparents' house, which is right next door. And so my dad I think he'd been the one who had been living up there about 9 years by himself. My mom and my sister had moved down to Vegas about a year after I had started college. And my dad would come down and visit, and then he would go back up. And so he was kind of living by himself. And then in 2009, I moved up there, but between undergrad and grad school, and lived there for like almost a year, and then moved back down to Vegas. So he was just kind of on his own, and he was, we'll say, a collector of things. Other people might say hoarder. I wouldn't go that far, but he was a collector of things. And so when he passed away, my mom went up there to like take care of things and to see what was still there. And it was a mess. Like it was a total mess. My dad had antique guns. He had this gorgeous canoe that was my grandfather's, all wood made out of one piece of wood. Like it was beautiful. It was a total mess. Like there's stuff everywhere, right? So she comes back and so he passed away in November. She went up in December. I think it was in January. She goes back up there and everything's been stolen, right? Like most everything's gone except for a bunch of junk that we didn't need and then all of our childhood stuff. So now she has to go up and we have to figure out what to do with all of this stuff. We tried to find everything, the guns, the canoe, like all the valuable stuff, but it was just gone. We know who did it, but the nothing ever came of it. So it was a real bummer. But there was already this like negative energy in the house because all of the stuff that had been stolen, and there was a lot of just but everyone's upset. So we're sad about my dad. We're angry about all the stuff that's missing that we'll never get back. And so I went up with my mom and we were like, when I was a kid, we converted our garage into a library. So there were just a shit ton of books everywhere. Like there's so many books. We have to figure out what to do with them. My mom can't take them down to Vegas with her. Like, so we have to go get a storage unit. So we're trying to get everything all packed up and put in boxes so that we can move them, but it's a big job. Like, and it's just my mom and I. So we had this plan that we were going to go up there, pack things up, and then we'd end up going back at some point to then take everything over to the storage unit and get through everything. Because it was also just an emotionally exhausting experience because you're there trying to go through all of these things, trying to get over your grief. Like it was ridiculous. So my mom and I are up there for I think it was like a weekend. That's all the time that we had. So we were packing everything up. We've got all this stuff all over, right? My dad worked for Fish and Wildlife, so he has all of these books that he had. He had all of his stuff from his office because he had recently retired. So it's just like imagine a garage that is now converted with bookshelves everywhere, and there are boxes, like it's almost floor to ceiling boxes. So we've got everything moved around, and my mom put cameras in because we were concerned about thieves because we have people coming in and just taking stuff. So there's a camera in there, there's cameras outside, there's a camera by the swimming pool, and we go home. Like, I go back to California, she goes back to Vegas. And, like, usually she's sending me cute videos, right, from the cameras because, like, we'll look outside and, "Oh, there's a possum," right? And I'm obsessed with possums, so I get really excited because there's a possum and her babies and, "Oh, there's a deer coming in and they're, like, drinking from the pool, and it's so cute." And then my mom started noticing and I guess I should also preface too that my dad had my grandparents' ashes in the house from when they passed.
Okay.
So, and also I should also add, and this tracks because my grandfather was kind of a goofy guy and he lived in an Airstream and he was just kind of like not all there. So his ashes were just in a cardboard box. And my grandmother's were in a nicer like urn and they were just kind of in the living room. So my mom when we were up there, we had this guy come out to paint and to like redo the nasty paint that was at our house. It was all peeling because it was old. So we watched him on the camera. So the first thing that my mom sends is well, she didn't send me the video because it was too creepy, but she was like, by the way, I was watching the video and the nice guy that we hired to paint, not only did he strip down to practically nude in the house and walk around, but he also was sifting through my grandmother's ashes. Like he opened the box, it was the urn, and was like sifting through the ashes. So my mom was like, okay, so you can imagine like the energies that are just compiling in this house now stealing, like passing, people passing away, and now this freak, right? That's like nude sifting through ashes. Like,
Did you fire him immediately? I mean,
oh, immediately, immediately. My mom's just like, "What?" And we had interviewed him in person, and he seemed totally normal, and then it was, like, as soon as we were gone and he didn't know th and I don't I would just always assume there are cameras, so who knows, maybe this is just, like, his, like he's an exhibitionist or something, or
voyeur
he
or
just didn't wanna
whatever,
get his
yeah.
clothes yeah, he just didn't wanna get his clothes covered in paint, but that doesn't explain the ashes. So
Gosh. I
so
don't know, this is weird.
super weird. So after all of these things started happening, we noticed on the cameras that there were these orbs. And at first I was just like, Mom, it's dust. It's just dust. And she's like, no, watch this. So she sends me another video and there's thousands of these little orbs, right? Thousands of them. And it's not dust because there's no wind. Like we're looking outside, there's no wind, it's perfectly still. And these little orbs are like performing. They're all synchronized and they're like doing these little swirls. And then they're like coming back and doing other ones in all these different directions. And so we're like, well, that's kind of weird, but it's kind of pretty. And we never felt threatened by it. Like it was mostly like, well, this is interesting. What could that be? And so we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to explain it. And then she sends me this video. It's all of these boxes against the back of our library. And there's a sign there. And it was my dad's fish and wildlife sign. And it's a metal sign. It was on its side like this. It's a rectangular sign. So it's on its side, the like wrong way up. And we're watching the video and it slowly turns and then rights itself. And so we're like, okay, well, that's weird. Like it could have just fallen because there's all sorts of stuff. But no, no, because then it continues and it turns
Oh,
and it turns and then it turned right back to where it was before. And nothing else is moving. There's no breeze. It's inside. Like it was just this sign. And I'll never forget it. I have a recording somewhere. I have to find it because we were
yes, you
just
do.
we were just stunned. We're just watching it like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" And so that combined with all of these orbs and just the general weirdness, like we never felt threatened by it though. We never felt it was negative. So for us, like we were just like, maybe it was dad or maybe it was grandma or grandpa that were, just trying to say hi. I don't know. But my mom's moving back up there in a couple weeks. So I can't wait to hear if it'll be the first time it's been inhabited in 10 years?
Wow.
Yeah, almost 10 years. So, first time somebody's lived there. So I'm anxious to see if she encounters anything.
I need these videos.
I have to find them.
I need
They're in my email somewhere. And if they're not, I can see if my mom still has the recordings or if she has any new ones too, because she's always sending me things and telling me about the weird stuff that she sees on there. Because for a while, she did not want to move back. And
yeah,
then she decided, okay, I need to because I can't just have this house sitting there. So I need to either fix it up so I can sell it or move back and actually live in it.
right. Is she fixing up to sell or is she moving it?
She's not 100% sure yet. She hates Vegas now. She's lived there for a really long time. So she's like she really wants to move and like have property. So she's deciding whether she just wants to move back up there and remain or fix it up to sell.
To me, that sounds like a sell, honestly. That feels like a fix up and
Mm,
sell. That feels like
fix up
a
and sell.
just sell. Maybe not even spend too much time fixing it up. Personally, you gotta do what you gotta do. But for me, yeah, that's a sell. And here's the thing. When you were talking about the orbs spiraling around, it made me think of like when you get a ton of fruit flies or gnats, sometimes they do stuff like that. And I'm wondering if you weren't just picking up really small fruit flies on the
That's what I
infrared.
thought, but we've actually seen those on the camera and they come up, like, you can see the
They're
demarcation things.
yeah,
'Cause that's what I was telling her for the longest time because the cameras, they'll pick up, like, anything. Like, she had a time where she thought that there was a burglar, but it ended up just being a spider, and because it, like, came down and, like, dangled his little legs, and then she sent me another one, and you could actually see that it was flies, and this one, I have no idea what it was, like, because whenever I look at them, like, yeah, I'm up for encounters of any kind, like, cool, I wanna see a ghost,
yeah.
like, but I'm always gonna be like, "Well, what is it?" Because I don't wanna get excited about something and be like, "This is a ghost," and then find out, like, actually it was a spider that was waving, and it was not
Yeah.
anything at all. So, I sat there for the longest time, like, with this one video that she sent, and I was like, "I've got nothing. I've got nothing."
I'm of a similar mind. I'd love to see something, but I've got to approach this with a skeptical mind as well, because if it's not something, it's not something, you know?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I've had people show me stuff before and I'm like, "Guys, I know where you're coming from. I get why you think it's that, but it's not in this case."
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, this is wild. Okay, so she's moving back up there. My vote is for sell. Make sure you tell her that.
I will.
And we're gonna try and get those videos, 'cause that will be, fascinating.
Okay.
Okay, because stuff I mean, yeah, lots of energies, like you said.
Yeah, it was weird. I haven't been back up there in a while. Last time I was there, I mean, I never felt like, "Oh, this is scary," but I did, think there's definitely something weird afoot, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
Shall we move on to the next story?
Yes. So now
Take us away,
we're ac
yeah.
we're getting into, I mean, it kind of all tracks because now it's into the serial killer real estate vibes. So, my mom was a realtor from the time I was, like, 9, and I was homeschooled, so we went everywhere. Like, it was always school was on, you went wherever my mom was going, like, when she had clients. So, the first one, I mean, it's scary, but it wasn't it's scary enough that my mom would have freaked out. Like, it was one of her first, I think, listings that she went to go see. Like, for those that aren't familiar, you go to a house and you, like, assess it, and then the person decides if they want you to be their realtor. So, my mom is very much like me, like I just told you, 3 hours in a parking lot talking to a guy about head cheese. Like, she's very much a weirdo magnet, but she also doesn't wanna hurt people's feelings, so she's always, like, super nice about it. And, like, even when we're in really terrible situations, like, really bad situations, like, we're always trying to not be rude. And, so
That's the first problem right there, like,
yes. Which I've experienced, and I know that it's not good, but it's so hard to retrain yourself to not be polite in terrible situations.
fair enough.
So she goes into this house, and I was in the car. Like, the 2 times that we've probably almost been murdered, the reason that she wasn't is probably because I was in the car. So I was chilling, doing my homework. I was probably, like, 9.5. I'm just probably doing English, whatever, writing stuff down, and she comes to the car, and she tells me this story that she was in the house with this guy. It was just one dude in the house, and he was going on and on about how his wife wasn't there, but that he was gonna take care of everything. And so he's showing her the house, and they go up to the top floor, and they're in the master bedroom. The master bedroom has this weird fireplace, and he's like, "Let me show you this weird fireplace." It didn't say weird, right? He's just like, "Let me show you this fireplace." But before he can do that, he has to lock the door. Like, he shuts and he locks the door. And then he goes to get something from the closet, and then he looks out the window and he sees me in the car. And he goes, "Oh, you have somebody with you." And my mom is like getting like terrified vibes, right? Like, something's going down. Like, this isn't good. And she was like,
Yeah,
"Oh yeah, no, my daughter's in the car. She's doing her homework." And all of a sudden, she said the mood changed. He put whatever he had back in the closet. He unlocked the door, and he was like, "Okay, I'll call you with whatever I decide," right? So she leaves, and she's, like, freaking out about it. Well, then, just a couple of weeks later, and I mean, she was scared, but she wasn't like, "Oh my god, that was so terrifying," right? But then a couple of weeks later, they found out that there had been a guy who had been, like, attacking realtors, like, in houses, like, luring them in and attacking them, right? So she already has this kind of weird, like, sense that this is something she's probably gonna encounter again, right? And my mom kind of has, like, she will never admit it. I think we talked about this before, but she has, if she does admit it, it's, like, once and then she forgets and she refuses to talk about it again. Like, she does have these, like, extra sensory things. She can sense things, and a lot of that has to do with, like, stress and things like that. But she had another listing, and this is the one that really scares me because, like, my sister and I were there, and we witnessed the whole thing. We were I must have been 11, so my sister was probably 7 or 8, and it was this house on the lake, and it was beautiful. Like, it's this huge house on this huge lake, and my mom had had a lot of trouble finding people who wanted to buy it. Like, we had had open houses for months, like, it was expensive, so it was really difficult to find somebody. And she gets a call from this guy. I'll never forget his name. It was John Brambley. And my mom's like, "Okay, we're gonna go to the house." And she said, "I'm taking both of you with me." I believe we had our dog with us too. We had a black lab Doberman. So I think that we brought her. I remember her, but I don't know if I'm just, like, putting her in there because she would come with us to houses a lot to be protection. But we got to the house, and my mom, she didn't wanna scare us because we're kids, but she was like, "Just in case anything weird ever happens, I want you guys to go to the neighbors." And there was a long drive. I mean, this was a long ass driveway. Like you would have to, it would take like maybe 5 to 10 minutes to go down and find a neighbor. And she was like, I want you to go to a neighbor and just let them know that something is happening and they need to call the police. And of course, we're 11 and 8. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but we were just kind of thinking, okay, yeah, sure. Like not thinking like this is a serious situation.
Right.
So he gets there, and so the way that the driveway is, it's a super long driveway, and then there's like not a carport, but there was an extended area where you could park. So my mom parked our Jeep there, and then he came down and he parked perpendicular to the driveway, which should have been the first red flag for us. But again, we're kids, so we're just like, oh, weird. And my mom's like, no, that's not weird. That's like serial killer. So he gets out and my mom is like, okay, I'm going to go take him inside the house. You girls stay outside. Okay. So we're staying outside. We're in the car. And again, he doesn't know that we're there yet. She was talking about it in the house with him. So my sister and I get out. And what my mom didn't know was that he had popped the trunk before he went inside with her. So he popped the trunk. And my sister and I walked over there. And again, like looking back on this, we were so stupid, like the most
Ugh.
naive,
Ugh.
like
I
kids, right?
I don't feel
So
good
we
about where
walk
this is going.
Cool. So we walk over to the trunk and we're just like, "Ooh, what's in the trunk? Like, this is weird." And he has all of these atlases, which is weird, like maps. This was before even MapQuest.
Right.
But he also had ropes and carabiners. And yeah, yeah. And so we're just like, "Oh, weird," right? Because we're just like, okay. So my sister and I decide that we're going to walk around. We've been told to stay in the car, but we're not listening, right? So we're walking around and they were in, I think it was in the hallway. So in the hallway, he was talking about his wife and kids. And my mom said she was getting really weird vibes from him. He's saying weird things about them. Like I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was not normal. And my sister and I were playing a game, I think down by the water. And he looks out and he was like, "Oh, I didn't know you had children." And she said, "Oh, yeah, those were my daughters. They're supposed to be in the car doing their homework or whatever." And his response to that was, "I don't know what I would do if anybody ever killed my children." And my mom's just like, "Oh, God." And mind you, this would have been 97. This was before cell phones. Like everybody had cell phones. Like I think my mom had maybe one of those like gigantic
The
ones, right?
big yeah.
But, like, to have range was, I mean, you didn't have that everywhere, and this was Washington. It wasn't rural Washington, but it was close enough, and so she didn't have any range, and so my mom's getting, like, major red flags, like, she just wants to get this guy out of here, but he's not having any of it, like, he wants to see the whole entire house, like, everything. So, my sister and I were still playing around by the lake, and they go up, they're, like, on a balcony, and they're waving at us, and my mom has this look on her face like, "Oh my god," "We need to leave, go." And of course, we're still stupid. So we're like not thinking maybe we should go and find a neighbor. So she's waving at us and we kind of think that that means like that we need to go back to the car. And we went back to the car, but again, we were misbehaving. So we decided that we were just going to take the long walk up the driveway. And that's when apparently he went outside. They were down, so it was a balcony and then a downstairs area that kind of opened out, and there was a patio. And she said that he went out the patio and was like he was looking for where we were. And he stopped and he looked at her and he said, "Where are the children?" in this very weird, like disassociated voice. And my mom said, "Oh, I don't know. They might have gone to go and see the neighbors," because she lied and said like that we
Mm.
were friends with the neighbors or something. And she said that he got this like switch on his face, like his face just switched. And he said, "No, I don't like this house." And then he got in his car and then he drove away. And my mom was just like, "Oh my God." She got in the car. I think we were like halfway up the driveway. She got in the car, she picked us up, and we were gone. And I have no idea what happened with John Brambley, but inside of me, like I know that man was a serial killer. Like there's no doubt about it. No
Or a
doubt about it.
serial killer to be.
Or a serial killer to be. Yeah.
Ooh.
Like My mom and I were talking about it not that long ago, and it's one of those things where it's like, you know that just with one decision that was different and everything could have changed. And I've searched for him and I've never been able to find anything about him. So I don't know if his name was fake or what,
Yeah, that's what I was just doing. Just a quick little just in case, but
right?
also, yeah, it could be just a no one, it could be fake name, and
Exactly.
maybe he decided not to serial kill that day. Who knows?
That's the thing, like, my mom and I talk about it, and it's and just the way that he was talking to her and the way that he was talking to her about, like, all in the first instance that my mom had that was weird, it was like that person, they were only attacking the realtors, right? But she said that the vibe here was it was like it was gonna be a whole thing, and she was trying to get out of it as quickly as possible while not triggering him to do anything, and she
Right.
has no idea what changed, but something changed in his whole entire countenance. She said it was just like he disassociated and then he got back in his car, he shut the trunk, and then he left. But thinking back to looking into that trunk, he had rope, he had zip ties, carabiners, he had all sorts of stuff in there that as an adult, you look back and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah, red flags, lots of them.
total red flags.
Jeez, I can't like, that's so risky, like, I never have thought about that. "Hey, I'm a real estate agent and my life is in danger anytime I show someone a house," potentially. I've never really thought about that because you see real estate agents as like, "Oh, yeah," like a whole different you never think about it in a spooky way.
No.
Wow, that is truly wild. Well, I'm glad nothing happened, but the vibes were definitely off, and, yeah, I wonder if real estate agents, like I wonder if something happens so much, like, people were getting attacked as agents so much that the culture of being an agent has changed where it's like, "Bring some pepper spray," or "Bring someone with you," or whatever.
Oh, yeah. My mom started to go she had friends in her office, and they would often go to show property together, or she would bring our dog, or sometimes she would even bring my dad just because you would get a weird vibe. But it was back in the day where it was like, well, just because I have a weird vibe doesn't mean that I should say, "No, I'm not going to go meet you somewhere," right? I think
Yeah,
now I know my mom makes more cognizant decisions of like, well, this person's giving me a weird vibe. Like, I'm not going anywhere near them, you know? And I think that
yeah,
because of a lot of things that happened, which I don't remember where or when it was, but I remember as a kid, there was a rash of real estate agents who were getting killed, like in listings. And it is kind of a scary profession if you think about it, like, especially if you are like a woman, like my mom going out to just to like meet random people. Like it is and you don't think of it that way. You're just like, "Oh, this person in their house," but you don't know that it's their house. You don't
yeah.
know that it's not like a crazy person that's going to murder you or keep you in a basement. You just don't
Crazy
know.
people be crazy, and
Yep.
these people are really clever, and it's in things that you wouldn't like, again, you wouldn't suspect, like, "Oh, that's not really their house," or whatever,
Mhm,
right? You could just give fake information to an agent and say, "I wanna meet you at this place," and give
mhm.
it a tour, and now you're dead. So,
Exactly.
yeah, there needs to be some more protection set up for these people, that is just wild.
Yeah.
Ooh. Well, again, glad nothing ever happened. And yeah, now everyone I know that's a real estate agent, I'm gonna reach out to them and be like, "Hey guys, be careful. Just watch out."
Take some pepper spray with you, maybe some brass knuckles. You never know
Yeah.
because you don't.
Bring some rope and some carabiners and zip ties just in case. No.
Exactly, exactly. Like a mallet or something just
Yeah.
in case, because you don't
Oh,
know.
yeah, exactly. The world is weird. People are scary.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's so funny because, like, just, like, talking about being like a weirdo magnet, like, that just would always happen to my mom, especially when we lived up in Washington. Did I tell you about the, like, cult house that she the 2 well, there are 2 cult houses that she,
No?
so so in Washington, she would ask for a listing, and this wasn't any, like, weird people there. They were super nice. They were really, like, friendly people. They just wanted their house gone, right? Because they were it was like it wasn't a trailer, but it was a house that didn't really have much of a foundation, and so she was like, "This is gonna be really difficult to sell. I'm so sorry." They were so nice. They lived out it was rural Washington, and they were like, "We just really wanna get out of here because we can't take the chanting." And my mom's just like, "Pardon?" And they were like, "There are people under the house, and it
Whoa,
like, we just
whoa.
take it."
Whoa,
Yeah,
whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, sorry. Right.
it's funny because all this stuff is so just normal to me because, like, we've talked about it for so long, like, in my family, and then it's just like you're telling somebody else, and they're just like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, the chanting. So
That I didn't expect that.
exactly. No, and they're just like it's not every night, like, they're just like every so often, there are people under the house, and we can hear them, and we don't know, like, what's going on, and it's really scary. It's like, "Well, yeah, obviously, that's really scary." So they go, "Can we show you something?" And, my mom, of course,
No.
ever the polite person, was like, "Yeah, what do you need to show me?" And, of course, she's also thinking in her mind, "Well, if I'm listing this house, I need to know all the stuff so that I can, talk about it properly." So they take her to this part of the property that's not quite a cave, but it's like an opening. And so they're like, if you look in here, you can see what we're talking. And she looks in there and it's a tunnel under the house. It's a tunnel that goes under the house.
Uh,
And not only is it a tunnel that goes under the house, but there's all sorts of like weird symbols that are drawn on this tunnel, right? And my mom is just like, what do I do with this? How do I sell this? And how do I help these people? But also, like, no one's going to buy a cold house. It's got like people that go under it and chant.
have you seen Barbarian?
Yes.
Have you seen
Mhm.
Longlegs?
Mhm. Oh, yes.
This is just
Yeah.
a little bit of that. A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
And to me, now it's one of those things where as an adult, you look back and you're like, damn it. Like I would, if it was me now, I would want in that tunnel. I would want to see what is like, let me take some pictures. Let me see these symbols. Let me like go down and see what's going on. Especially because I remember watching a documentary as a kid about some weird vampire cult that was out in that area. And I
Yeah.
was like, I wonder if it was them. Like, could be like going down this tunnel and chanting. Like,
Wouldn't you call the cops and be like, "Hey, someone dug a tunnel under my house?"
one would think, right? But they were too scared. Like they didn't know what it was. Oh, they didn't know how to describe it either. They were just like, "There's just chanting under the house." I'm like, "Okay, I'd be out of there. I wouldn't be living there. No,
I don't like loud neighbors. So,
no."
yeah, wouldn't be me. That has to be pretty loud for you to hear it through the ground.
Well, but they didn't have much of a foundation, so it was just like the ground and then the house. So there wasn't that layer of concrete. It was just like the ground and then the floor.
Well, I understand that, but still, how thick was the
No, yeah,
ground
it
to
would
get down to
be.
the tunnel?
Mhm,
That's maddening. That would
mhm.
drive me and probably many others insane to hear that. Okay,
And I
so
think I would just abandoned the house at that point, and I would just been like, yeah.
did she end up selling the place?
I don't think she listed it. If I recall correctly, she was like, "I'm sorry, I don't think we're gonna be able to sell this." And I wonder what happened to the people. I'll have to ask her about that.
Please do. I am so curious, but I'm having a hard time. Why? Why are people
Why?
digging tunnels underground? Where and like, how isolated was their house from everything else? Like, could
Oh,
they
it was in the middle
see that
of
their
nowhere.
neighbors were doing this? Like, hey, these are the people.
No, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was really rural Washington. I can't remember where exactly, but it was like it was at least an hour outside of Olympia where I'm from, and
Hmm.
it's just woods. So it's just woods, and you don't really know your neighbors. You don't really see where you are, and yeah.
What's to stop people from just digging a tunnel in the middle of nowhere? I guess.
Mhm. Exactly.
Wow.
And if you think that these people are creepy, you're probably not gonna confront them.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe they're like super chill. They're like, oh, sorry, we'll keep
Yeah,
him down.
exactly. It's just a really friendly cult, and they're like,
Yeah,
"Hey,
the
come
super
join
polite
us."
cult members.
Yeah.
Wow. Dude, the life of your mom.
I guess that being in real estate, you encounter so many more weird people just because you're in their homes and you get to see really intimate details of people's lives that you don't normally get to see. And I remember just like all sorts of weird things. Like they weren't necessarily creepy, but it was just like you would never have known that about that person if you hadn't been in their house. And we got to see that. It was not what you normally get to know about other people. Some
Right.
of it good, some of it not so good.
Any profession that puts you in strangers' homes, you just are gonna come up with a story. Like you got
Mhm.
it. Okay. Well, wow. What else do you got for us?
Well, my last favorite real estate story
Oh yeah.
is another cult house. And this one was in Vegas. And it's in North Las Vegas. Well, actually, no, just kidding, because I've got two more. I totally forgot about this other one. Before I get to my favorite one, that's the Vegas one. This was another Washington house. This was just a
Excellent.
brief encounter. We were going to the gun range with my dad. We were really little. Maybe I might have been 9, 10, and my sister would have been like 7. And we went to the gun range and there was a pioneer cemetery. And we were like, how cool. Let's stop at this pioneer cemetery. And we saw these graves that were like from the 1800s. Like, it's super cool. And then we see this house up on the hill. And my mom's like, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful house. And it was gorgeous. It was like Victorian and super old. And for some reason, I don't know what possessed her, but my mom was like, let's go see it. Let's go up there and see this house. So we drive up the driveway and there's this old woman outside. And the house was huge and it had these really interesting like star stickers like all over the windows. Like you couldn't really see in because there were star stickers and moons and all this stuff. And the woman outside was just sitting there and she was clearly blind. She had a stick and she was sitting there. And my mom got out of the car and she was just like, oh my gosh, this house is so beautiful. And she wanted to know more about it because we were by this pioneer cemetery. Like there's all this really old stuff out there. But all the woman wanted to tell her was that she wanted the people inside to stop, like, basically chanting again, and she was like, "I want the voices inside to stop." And my mom was like, "Okay, pass." And, we got back in the car and we left, and we looked it up. We were trying to find out what it was, and we couldn't find it on a map, and then when we went back, it was gone. So that was another weird one. That was just one that I just popped into my head. I
Wild.
forgot all about it.
That is
Oh, I'm gonna
wild,
have to
though.
ask my mom about it. Oh.
I just want the voices to stop. There's, like,
I
a
just want the
cult
voices
just
to stop.
tormenting this old blind lady.
Exactly, exactly. So that's like I guess the 3rd cult house that I've been in, or been near at least. But this other one in Vegas, this one, it's in North Las Vegas, and we'd passed it like 100 times. It was the coolest house. It was in the middle of nowhere, just desert, and it was like a Tudor style house. So it was something that really stood out, and you're just like, "What is this? This is so weird." So it was for sale, and my mom was like, "Oh my god, we can finally get in." Because one of the cool things about being in real estate is that if a house is for sale and it has a lockbox and it's on the MLS, you can go see it because you
Right.
have a key card.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were like, finally, we can get in and see this house. My mom's like, I don't have any clients for it, but let's go in and see what it's like. And then maybe I'll be able to find someone because what a cool house to sell. And it was expensive. Like it was ridiculously expensive, especially for being in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. So we get there and it's really ostentatious. It's weird, like that it's there amongst all of these other normal houses. And when we get out, there are these huge fountains with gargoyles. And my
That's
mom's
kinda cool.
immediately turned off because she's just like,
Oh.
ew, what's this? And I'm like, I love gargoyles. So give me a gargoyle or two. That's so cool. So I'm admiring the gargoyles. I'm like, this is cool. I like it. So we unlock the gate, we get to the house, and she undoes the key card. We get in, and immediately you're like, ooh, this is a weird vibe. Like, what is going on in this house? So the ceilings are all painted with like a sky, which that's cool. Murals. I'm into murals. I don't, you know. So we are going through. The kitchen seems normal. The bedroom was a little weird, but it's not that bad. And then we get to the study, which is downstairs down this long hallway. And the study has a sign above it that says the Grand Wizard. And I'm like, oh, so we're in a clan house. Okay. That's a little disconcerting. And because my mom's just like, "Grand Wizard," and I'm like, "No, no, I think this could be the clan." So I'm like, "This is weird," and I'm like, I need to research this when I leave because I didn't know that we had, like, a clan house in Vegas, in North Las Vegas, at least to my knowledge. So my mom's now a little bit like, "Oof," but let's see the rest of the house because I mean, you might as well. So we walk around outside, and outside had weird vibes, like weird vibes. Like there were all of these stone circles that had clearly been made by people. They had planted trees in different like formations. And I'm just like, you can't quite tell what it's supposed to be, but you know it's not good.
It's something.
And
You can tell it's
yes,
something.
it's something. I don't know what, but they clearly have a purpose. And we noticed that there's a room that we didn't see. It wasn't like immediately visible when you were inside, but there was a gigantic incinerator that's attached to the back and all of these ashes, just like ashes of stuff. And we're just like, what is that? And there's a newspaper, but there's also a lot of other stuff that had clearly been burned. So we go back inside the house and we're looking around trying to find an entrance to this room. We finally find a door. You couldn't really see it, like it was hidden. So we open the door and it leads you to it's gigantic. I don't know how we could have missed this room. It was huge. It's like this pretty much the size of my apartment. And it was all painted black. Black walls, black ceiling, black floor. and then this gigantic incinerator that's also painted black.
Black floor. Black it.
Yeah,
Wow.
like, it was like a void, and we're
Okay.
just like, "What is this?" And so between that and the fact that this was more than likely a clan house, we were like, "Okay, let's go," because I don't know what else is hidden here or who else is hidden here, and I don't wanna find out. And we searched for any information on that house, we could find nothing, but I know something bad, lots of bad happened there. It had to have. Like, what was going on?
One, I feel like you don't casually have a massive furnace at your house
No,
or incinerator or whatever.
no.
And like a wood stove, sure, but an all blackout room for like an incinerator or just doesn't feel good. I don't like that.
No. It's unsettling.
Definitely. Unholy vibes for reals.
For real.
Wow. Wow. I love these real estate stories. This is
They're
fantastic.
so
Thank you.
so wild. It's so wild. I'm gonna have to ask my mom about, like, what are the ones I'm forgetting? Because it was just, like, growing up, like, it was all the time. Like, there was always something weird, always something weird.
Tell her to come on the show. I'll talk to her
Yeah.
directly.
Be like, "Come on, let's do some real estate time," because that's, like, at least, what, 20 something, maybe 30 something years? There's gotta be more. It was wild.
That's so cool. But also, like, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, cult houses, man, that kinda bothers me. These people are just chanting underground, man. How
Right?
inconsiderate. Anyway, real estate stuff, I think we've got all we've got from that for now, right?
Yep.
Give me a couple more of the goodies that you've got. Let's hear some more. I wanna hear about the
That
Queen Mary, and anything else that popping in your head, I'll take it.
So that ghost tour, man, it was really cool because when we went, because I mean, we've gone loads of times and there's always something weird, right? Like the one that I told you about with the weird like slime or whatever and the lock moving. But this time we went with a legitimate ghost hunting experience. Like they have there's a specific name and it's like a group that comes out and they do these tours. We went and they're really small and it's like 3 hours, I think you go into all these different places that you don't normally get to go, and they have equipment, and it was equipment that I had never gotten to use before because, like, I went to a place in New Orleans where you got to use divining rods
Okay.
and go into a house, and that was kinda cool because in that one, they didn't tell you what was going on, so you're using these divining rods, and then you're trying to make communication, and we did, and it was really creepy, and then they're like, "By the way, this guy chopped up his girlfriend in here," and you're like, "Oh, that's it's pretty creepy." But in this one, it was just, stuff that happened on the ship. So nothing too gruesome like you found in other places. So one of the things that I had never experienced was, have you ever seen where they use like a radio and you have the noise canceling
Yep.
headphones, everything? Okay.
Yep, yep, yep.
So
The Estes
I
method is what they call it, I believe.
yes, I'd never gotten to use one before, and so we were really cool because you get to see it and you get to see other people using it, but they were like, "Okay, now you all get to use it." And my husband is like, really, he doesn't believe in ghosts or anything, very skeptical. So we're in the not the totally the front of the ship, but we're in a very like it's very claustrophobic. You're very close to the bow, and it's like there's a rope. I can't remember what the rope led to, but it's creepy in there, right? You can't see a thing. There's no lights. We have like maybe what we have a lantern, and that's it. And so they ask, like, okay, who wants to use the thing? Like, have the headphones on. And my husband volunteered. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Okay, cool. So he sits down and he and this other guy, they put on the headphones and we're listening to them as they speak. And there's a guy there next to us and he was asking questions. Like he was asking like
Mhm,
really personal, like deep questions, right? And what my husband and the other guy were saying, like, we're legitimately answering those questions. Like
mhm.
it was not like, something where you could make it work. Like it was directly answering the questions that he had. And it was mind blowing because you see the other like, the lights. It's like make this light flash if you're here. And it's like, ah, that's easy. You could totally make that, happen yourself. But this guy was asking about a family member who had been on the ship and he was just like, is this person here? And my husband like that's all they asked in every room. And in most rooms it was really annoying because they were hogging the conversation. But in this room, like he was actually having his questions answered and they were being answered by my husband who had the thing on his head. And so he was asking about his family member who had stayed on the ship who had like stowed away or something. And his name was Paul, I want to say. And he hadn't even said the name yet. He hadn't said anything about it in any of the other rooms. He had said, "Is my cousin here?" And my husband said his name and said Paul. And I was just like, and he was like, "Yes, that's it." And we're just all like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy." And it was every single question that he asked, like, "Were you here?" Like asking specific details about where he was on the ship, like whatever they were listening to on the radio, like it specifically answered that question.
Yeah.
And I was watching this and I was just like in shock. But when we got to the most haunted room on the ship, I got to have the headphones on, and it's a really bizarre experience because you have no clue what's going on the outside. And so you're just listening to these things and you can barely make anything out. So you're shouting out something that you think is a word, but maybe isn't a word.
Mhm.
But in every single one of those instances, the things that were being said were really truly answering the questions that where people were asking.
Were you blindfolded as well?
Yes.
Okay, because 'cause I'm not even kidding, probably 2 or 3 episodes before this one, I've recorded with a guy, did ghost hunting, did the same thing, headphones, blindfold, all this other stuff, and to them, it just sounds like gibberish, and they just
Mhm,
kind of, like, say what they're hearing,
mhm.
but on the outside, with those that are, like, looking at this blindfold, deafened person, they're like, "Oh, these are actual words."
Yes.
But in their case, it was in Spanish, and the person doesn't speak Spanish anyway. Yeah, this is interesting.
That's so cool. And it is, it's like it's gibberish, you have no idea what you're saying, and you just like, sometimes you're just saying, like, sounds, and it just sounds like sounds to you, but it's making sense to what they're asking, and it was like that in every single room. The unfortunate part was that we had a couple on our group that kept in every single room, something would start to happen, and then they would do something goofy, and the whole vibe would get thrown off, like, the whole vibe got thrown off, and in this haunted room, while I had my blindfold on, while I had my he decided to go into the most haunted room's bathroom and flush the toilet. And it totally threw off, like, whatever entity was speaking with us. Like, my husband said the vibe was just like and it was gone, and I was so frustrated
Why
because I
even
was like
go if you're gonna be a dick about it?
and it wasn't on purpose. None of it was malicious. It was just that he was so goofy that he didn't realize that this was what was happening. In the first room, he was trying to free a spider, and he accidentally put the spider on his wife, and she screamed, and then the ghost, whatever entity was in there, was gone, and it
But
was really
but
disappointing.
yeah, it's like, "Hey, you and your husband are there trying to have good time." They're just like, these people have gotta be, like, no attention span or something, like, "Oh, look, a spider. Oh, let me flush this
Yep,
out." Like, I'm just
yep.
gonna bump like, "Dude, you're here for this. Focus." You know? Oh, that would bother me. That would bother
It
me.
was it was so frustrating, especially because I mean, we had gone on other experiences on the Queen Mary, like, they used to, they don't do it so much anymore because the swimming pool has to be I think they have to do some repairs on it because it's too dangerous to be in there, but the dressing rooms in there where they had the changing rooms, you could walk through those, and they are I mean, they are so creepy, like, whether you see anything or not, I mean, you could hear stuff in there. You could hear footsteps, you could hear laughter. It's creepy. My husband refuses to believe it, but you could hear that stuff in there. It is not just your brain making this up, but it's just scary enough when you're walking in there because it's pitch black, you have a little flashlight, and you are walking through and you swear that you are going to see something, even if you don't. So if you ever get a chance to go on the Queen Mary and go like in the swimming pool, it is probably one of the scariest places. Even though there's nothing like negative about it, like just the anticipation, knowing that something is going to happen is so scary.
Remind me where it's at again?
It's in Long Beach.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit farther away from there, but it might be worth a trip here eventually.
Oh, it is. It
Um,
absolutely.
Now, your husband being the skeptic or what's the like atheist or whatever you want to call it, skeptic. Let's just say skeptic that he is. How did he react to all of this? Did he try and make it make sense for himself to reconcile his non-belief with what was happening in front of him?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was so hard to explain when he had the headphones on and the fact that what he was saying was legitimately answering those questions. And of course, it's difficult to make him believe that because he wasn't there. So, I mean, he was there, but he wasn't really there, so he couldn't actually hear those things. Now, the tour guides do record the whole entire thing, so you can go back later and watch it,
Yeah.
which is really cool too. So, you could probably find it. You could probably hear the guy ruin everything with the spider and the toilet. But that part's really cool too, because then you can go back and revisit some of these things. So if you were wearing the headphones and the blindfold and you didn't get to experience what was happening, you can go back and you can see and kind of get an idea for yourself. I don't think he's ever going to do that because he, is going to try and reconcile it. But it's a very cool thing because it is creepy because you can't see anything. You can't really hear anything except for what's going through the headphones. So it's really claustrophobic.
What was his thoughts about what he saw when you were wearing it all, though?
Coincidence. Coincidence. He was like, you're just making noises. Like you could stretch these things to answer. Because I'm just more prone to being like, wow, that was really interesting. Like that could totally be something legitimate. It doesn't necessarily mean it's legitimate, but it seems like it's legitimate. And I prefer to err on the side of that something could be there than there isn't, you know?
I do know.
Just
We're
because otherwise it's rude, right?
I guess, like I said, we're very, like, similar in that sense where it's like, I'd love for it to be a thing, but sometimes it isn't. I get it. It's a healthy skepticism with
Mhm.
also healthy or, like, the openness to believing that these things are there.
Exactly,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
I come from a very religious background, so I already have my own, like, kind of preset things, but even then, I'm just like, "Yeah, who knows? I like it."
Yeah, yeah.
We kind of glossed over it because, we were getting to this, which this is fantastic, and I would actually love to go. But anyway, we glossed over the first trip to the Queen Mary with the goo.
Mhm.
Could you
Did we talk about that last time or not? I can't
We
remember.
talked about it in our very first phone call together, but it
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
on the episode. So if
Okay.
you don't mind, would you be okay going through and
Yeah.
telling that story as well?
So, this was years ago. I can't remember how long because 'cause we've been to the Queen Mary, like, a million times. Like,
Hmm,
that was the place where we would go all the time on vacation back in the day when it was, like, $50 a night to stay there. So we went this one time. And so my husband and I were obsessed with this psychic paranormal investigator named Peter James. Like, he is my most favorite paranormal investigator of all time. He passed, I think, in 2010. He has this great documentary. It's called Ghost Adventures on the Queen Mary. We've seen it at least a million times because we'll just put it on in the background and just like watch it 10 times in a row
I
because
wanna
it's
watch it now.
Oh, yeah. No, you can look it up. You can find it on YouTube. Peter James, he's the best. Like, I
Okay.
love this man so much. So, we got obsessed with it before I went to the Queen Mary for the first time, and we would watch it over and over. And so when I went, I was just like, "Yes, the Queen Mary. Like, I'm ready for something, like an encounter." And I think the first time we went there, there was just one thing that happened, and it was like the lock thing was swaying and there was no wind. And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so scary." And my husband's like, "It's just a breeze. Like, it's a breeze." And then he would go like, "If you're a ghost, I dare you to do something." And I'm like, "Oh my god, stop." Like, you're gonna just invite
Don't
people,
provoke
right?
them.
Exactly. So nothing happened that time. And then I think it was maybe the second or third time that we were there, we had gone to lunch or something, and we went back to the room. We were going to go to the observation bar for drinks and then have dinner. But we were tired because it had been a drive. We had
Mm,
come from Vegas. So we were going to take a nap. So we took what we thought was like maybe an hour nap, and it ended up being like 3 hours. It was one of those time things that we were just talking about,
mhm.
where it was hours had passed. And when we woke up, we were like, "What happened?" It was dark, and I had set my clothes out that I was gonna wear to dinner it was either on the bed or the chair, but I couldn't find them. And I was like, "Where are they?" So I got up. My husband was still kind of drowsy and like trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm searching for my clothes for dinner, and they're under the bed, still folded, but they were just under the bed.
Hmm.
And I was like, "I didn't put them there, to my knowledge, and I hadn't had any drinks yet, so it's not like I had been to the observation bar and just,
Hmm.
like, lost track of time that way." Like, they were just under the bed. And then when my husband got up, all along, like, where our heads were, like, where the shoulders were, was this weird goo. Like, clear, but it wasn't water. It had no odor or scent or anything, but it was a thick. Goo. The only thing that I can think of to liken it to is, like in those old Victorian photographs of spiritualism, the ectoplasm, and that's immediately what I thought of, which is goofy, but I was just like, it's so weird, right? Because it's not water. It's not like it was a million degrees out and you're like, ew, it was just really sweaty. It was like legit, like syrupy goo that was clear like water and
And
just like
there's a
up my
lot of it.
yeah, and there was a lot of it. And we were like, "What the heck is this?" And I mean, like, what do you do? Call housekeeping and be like, "By the way, there's some sort of like ghost goo on the bed?" Like, how do you explain that? So
Did someone come in and goo on us while we were sleeping?
exactly. It was like slime? Like, I don't know. Like,
Rude.
what is this? So it was quite rude. And if it was a ghost, it was quite rude because it had us like really spooked because we were just like, what is going on? So between that and like our clothes under the bed, and we were just like, what is going on? And I can't remember if that was the same night that we went on because they used to have this other ghost tour that took you through like the bowels of the ship.
Mhm.
And it's hard to say because I mean, we've stayed on the Queen Mary at least like 20 times. And but it might have been like one of those same times where we went on another tour, which was really spooky too. So it's hard to say. Like you're always going to encounter something when you go. It's just a matter of if you're going to say that it was something ghostly or if you're going to explain it away. And sometimes you explain it away and sometimes you just can't, like with Ghost Goo.
What if it was all like an elaborate setup and the crew of the ship was like, "Okay, put in the sleeping gas, make him sleep longer, go in there, move some stuff around." You
Oh
know,
my God.
that'd be
But you know
wild.
what? That would be a great, like, marketing ploy if but you'd have to and it's not like you could get permission because people gotta think it's a ghost.
Exactly. That's the hard part. It's like if that is what they're doing, it's a very invasive, yeah,
Very invasive.
yeah.
But I've heard stories of people in some of the other rooms who have had, like, the, blankets ripped off the bed in the night, things just, like, falling from the walls. I've never experienced that myself, but I'm totally down. So, if a Queen Mary ghost wants to, like, really mess with us, I'm fine with that,
So
just as long as it's
why have you gone and stayed there so many times?
well, we love it so
Just for
much because
fun?
it's for well, and we both have some spiritual connection to the ship. That's where we went, like, when we first got together. My grandmother came over to America on that ship on one of its last voyages from
Really?
Wales. My parents almost got married on the ship, but they got married on the ship that was next door to it, that was in the harbor. So, like, I'm really close to the ship, and then my husband and I went there for Dark Harbor, their Halloween thing, and then, of course, with Peter James. Once you watch Peter James on YouTube, I will send you the info for it because
Please do.
now you have
I will
it.
watch it. Yeah.
It's short and it's a delight, but, yeah, we were just very attached to it.
Well, that's fascinating. I would love to go. So does it just sit on the water?
Mhm. It's out and now it's just a floating hotel, and actually during COVID so a couple of years prior to COVID, there was a new company that was in charge of it. It used to be controlled by the city, and then it was purchased by a private entity and turned into a hotel, and then I think it was back in maybe 2016, 2017, they discovered that it was something like they were embezzling a bunch of money, and the ship was in massive disrepair. So in 2020, during COVID, they weren't quite sure what they were going to do with it. And we were devastated because there was talk of sinking it. And it's one of the last golden era ocean liners that is still like actually there. Like most of them have been sunk and taken apart. So we were devastated because not only do we love this, but also like the historical value of it is really important because a museum and it's an incredible thing. So they found that it would cost more to sink it than it would to restore it, which was lucky. So now it's owned by the city, it's controlled by the city. And so every time you go and you stay or you take a tour, the money's going toward restoring the ship. And they're doing an excellent job of restoring it. So that makes me very happy.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And their whole shtick is probably like, "Hey, this is haunted, come stay," kind of
Mhm.
thing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And they really lean into it, and, like, they're leaning into it probably a lot more than they did for a long time, and they also have, like, exhibits on world because it was, used in World War II as well, like, they
Mhm.
painted it gray, it was known as the Gray Ghost, and it used to go after the German torpedoes, the torpedo ships.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, so they've got a whole section on that there as well.
Lots of history in this boat, lots of energies, lots
Mhm.
of vibes.
Oh, yes.
So out of all the
Oh,
times you've gone and stayed there, those are really the only 2 there were things?
there's always something, like, always something where you hear something or you see something that you can't explain. I mean, I have never seen somebody in the hallway, but I know that people have taken photos of, like, they'll be walking the halls at 2 o'clock in the morning and there's like a person ahead and you take a picture and then they're gone. Every single time though, I will say that there has been at least something strange where I've either seen something or heard something that shouldn't have been there.
Hmm.
So I'm pretty sure that if you go, you'll encounter something.
I want to now. I'm gonna have to make a trip out of it. Dang. I wonder what it's like to work on that ship,
Right.
to be a full-time employee in the
You'd
haunted
have
hotel ship.
Oh my god, you'd have to see some things.
You probably become numb to it. You're just like, whatever. Oh,
Probably. I was at the Winchester Mystery House a couple of weekends ago when we went on our trip, and that's what the tour guides were saying. Like, yeah, stuff happens all the time. And now they don't even notice anymore all the weird stuff.
that's wild. Yeah, there was someone else I talked to. It might have been Aaron, I don't know. They were saying that the Winchester house was like not as crazy, haunted, and spooky as it's made to look like on TV and movies and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel so fed right now. You've given me so many goodies, and I appreciate that, Halen. I appreciate you coming back on. Is there anything else you wanna give us? Any other tidbits? Any other stories you want to throw down?
I can't think of anything right now. That was all the stuff that I was remembering. It's just that they just pop into my head and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about that. I forgot about that.
Just like you forgot someone was living in your attic until I brought it up.
Exactly. Just like I forgot somebody was living in my attic. Although I will say that after watching that Unsolved Mysteries that I was telling you about,
Mhm.
I've been reading up on Mothman and man, I'm just like, I went into the wrong field. Like I should have been studying Mothman like my whole life. Like there's such weird stuff out there. And I'm just like, I got to do some more research on it.
Yeah, cryptids. I've got 2 people coming up that skinwalker stories,
Oh,
and I've got one coming up that still trying to get them on to tell their story about. They call it Mothman, but uh, it's probably some sort of shapeshifter or skinwalker or something like that. And yeah, cryptids and all that kind of stuff fascinates me as well. So yeah, I've thought about a lot of your stories. The hole in the wall with the band-aid, which I still don't understand.
I don't get that one.
The person living in the attic, and then also your Mothman, Owlman. Yeah, I think about that stuff. I think about a lot of these a lot. Anyway, thank you again for coming back, and if you
Thank
think of
you.
anything else, you're always welcome back on the show.
I'll let you know.
We love to have you, and, you know, if you wanna come back on and talk ancient demonology again or witch stuff, I always love the
Yeah.
fun facts and the tidbits. So, we're here for it. Thank you again, and, everyone be sure to check Haley's socials, at Creature Teacher X, I'll link it again. Haley, we appreciate you. If you get those videos, I'll follow up with you about that.
Yeah. I'm going to be searching. I'm going to be hunting those down.
Excellent. Yeah, for all of those listening or watching, we love that you're, interested in this. If you or anyone you know has spooky stories or happenings, supernatural or not, ghosts, demons, aliens, stalkers, killers, serial killers, anything in between, whatever, all of it. I'm in it for the love of the game. I want more. I want more. So please reach out on Instagram or TikTok or on YouTube at Unholy Vibes Pod, or you can email unholyvibespod@gmail.com. I also will do anonymous storytelling if you're too nervous or scared to come on the show. I've had a couple people now submit anonymous stories because the people involved are still alive and around and they don't want them to. Yeah. Anyway, so if you have any stories you want to tell anonymously, reach out. I'm here for you. Thank you again for listening. Also, if you like my little ghost girl crew neck, this is from Resting Stitch Face. My friend Liz makes these. They're great. Anyway, everyone, remember, stay spooky. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.